Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will today deliver his maiden budget speech with the expectation that he needs to strike a balance between needs and feasibility. Godongwana will do this amid the continued economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic, issues around the funding of struggling SOEs, and providing measures to capitalize on positive economic activity. As always, our team is on the ground, ready for the day ahead. Our business editor, Xolani Mbanjwa, he's in Cape Town alongside our reporters, Nasiphi and Athi Mtongana, all at strategic locations across the mother city. Xolani, let's begin with you. We know typically in the lead up to these kind of budget speeches, there's always this lockup that takes place for specifically people in the media and sometimes some economists. I mean, what can we expect in the lead up to this lockup? I know you've got an economist with you there that can shed light on this.
Good morning, Ananda. Yes, indeed, it's quite a good morning here in Cape Town, and there is a hive of activity, strong police presence, strong media presence, and the walkways are being swept, the ground is being prepared, and there's some semblance of normalcy that's returning to this first broadcast since that January 2 fire. There's some semblance of normalcy returning with those who are usually here. And the person who is used to being here is Hugo Pina. He's the chief economist at the Bureau of Economic Research, and he is on his way to attending that lockup to look at the finer details of this particular budget. And he joins me right now. Hugo, thank you very much for joining me. Let's start about the big issues when it comes to the budget today. One of the big issues is the revenue overrun that the South African Revenue Service is expected to collect some more money than was expected. What does that mean for the Finance Minister?
Yes, good morning. So it certainly puts the Finance Minister in a better position than what we've had the last number of years. So he now has a bit more in the kitty to almost play with in terms of the big expenditure items. So one is looking for a fairly substantial revenue overrun, but we must just bear in mind this is for the current fiscal year, for 21-22. So that may be anything between 50 to 100 billion rand, more than what was expected in November at the time of the medium-term budget policy statement. But I think the crucial thing is, what is the Treasury's expectation of how sustained this revenue windfall or overrun is likely to be? Because, of course, we're budgeting for the next 3 years.
So this is not a long-term revenue overrun. It's really short-term. So he can't make long-term decisions on short-term revenue.
So I think because it is such a big overrun, your starting point for revenue will now be better. So relative to November, he probably will see for the next 2 years the revenue expectation is better than what we had before, but not to the same extent than we're likely to see for the current fiscal year. But your point is correct. I mean, this is very much driven by high commodity prices, so very strong mining sector profits. We see the likes of Kumba Iron Ore, Anglo-American coming out with record profits. And you are right, the question is how sustainable is that? So I think from the Treasury's point of view, they will not want to be embarking on big structural or longer-term expenditure items, given that the revenue is likely to be temporary, or the windfall is likely to be temporary.
One of the big issues, Hugo, is the issue of the basic income grant. We are not there yet, but the issue is quite topical right now. There has been a mandate that was given to the Finance Minister by President Ramaphosa. However, on the 350 rand distress relief grant, relief of distress grant rather, what do you think is going to be the big considerations, seeing that it has been extended for another year?
Yeah, so perhaps first of all to say that that extension was not part of the fiscal framework back in November. So let's say roughly 45 billion rand will now be added to expenditure for the next fiscal year, so 2022-23. Now, we think that the revenue overrun will be used to finance that, so we're unlikely to see big tax hikes to finance this. But the question then is what happens after this 12-month extension? Because in the SONA, there was a specific line which said that, look, it's now been extended for 12 months, and then government will now, or there will now be deliberations on what replaces it after 12 months. So I don't think given that these are ongoing discussions, there are likely to be discussions on how we finance a, let's say, more permanent relief grant or something else, perhaps eventually a basic income grant. Now, given that those discussions are ongoing, I think the budget is just going to fudge that. We're going to see the impact of the 12-month extension on expenditure, but I don't think it will be in the budget framework, or I don't think anything additional will be in the budget framework beyond 2023. Now, of course, that doesn't mean it won't happen eventually, but I think Treasury can almost get away with not putting anything permanent in now because, as I say, these discussions have not been finalized.
Hugo Pinar, the chief economist at the Bureau for Economic Research. You heard him there, a lot of expectations as he heads into that budget lockup where he will be seeing the finer details of the budget and indeed the issue of relief for the poor, relief for those who need the 350 Rand grant is topical at this year's budget.
Without a doubt, Mbanjwa, our business editor, live to us there from the parliamentary precinct in just outside the Cape Town City Hall. Now, we're watching the story for you from various vantage points. A number of organizations are planning to protest at the gates of Parliament, and that's in a bid to have their voices heard. Let's bring in Nasiphi. She's watching that leg of the big story for us live from Langa. Nasiphi, if you've been able to speak to any of the organizers of these protesters, what exactly are they calling for?
Well, Ayanda, the list is endless in the number of organizations that plan to make their way to Parliament, where we know that the Minister of Finance will be making his national budget speech, and their hopes is to have their last say, basically, and hope that their voices echo inside the parliamentary precincts and into the Good Hope chamber where this budget speech will be held, and hope that the minister will indeed heed to their calls. A number of organizations, including the EFF, that will be moving from various parts of Cape Town CBD to Parliament just after 10 o'clock ahead of that 2 p.m. national budget speech. And a number of organizations, political parties, including citizens themselves, waiting with bated breath to hear what the Minister of Finance has to say in regards to the budget for the 2022 year. And basically a number of places, including like Langa, where we're currently standing, where they are hoping that there is a cash injection into the police department that will obviously be translating not only in boots on the ground, but also resources that is putting up, more police vans, including communities that have been looking for the police department to build police stations like communities like Makaza. They are hoping that those calls by the various communities are also answered, and obviously at the backdrop of the announcement by the President during his State of the Nation address in their investment into infrastructure that will be indeed creating those job opportunities, including upgrading communities like Langa, and also COVID-19 informal settlements that mushroomed during the COVID-19 period, where areas like that do not have proper infrastructure, nor do they have housing, and hoping that the minister does touch on the issue of the housing department, infrastructure, including policing in various communities in the Western Cape that have been plagued by crime.
Nasiphi, live to us there from Langa in Cape Town. Nasiphi, thanks very much indeed. It doesn't end there, though. So much has been said already around the COVID-19 social relief of distress grant. Our Athi Mtongana is live to us now from just outside a South African post office. That's in Bellville ahead of the speech. And the sentiment there, Athi, is important on a morning like this, given the fact that, according to many, it's a far-gone conclusion that the minister will have to say something about providing relief for the poor.
Yes, one thing that I picked up from my previous guest when I had that conversation with Michelle earlier on is that they desire, as social grants recipients, to have the minister announce some kind of increase, saying that what they've been receiving for years is not enough. Now, you also then have the 350 social relief of distress grant, which many people who've lost their jobs during the pandemic have been given by the government, including the unemployed, and they are also sharing the same sentiments about how they would have hoped that this would have been a little bit more than what they have, because it is just simply not enough. I do have with me a graduate from 2016, a 28-year-old David. Thank you so much for your time. Now, you mentioned to me that you were a graduate. You graduated in 2016, you're 28 years old, and you got retrenched. What happened after you got retrenched in terms of your application for that 350?
Like when I received my 350, like I told the other people also, the 350 doesn't mean nothing. Like if I get my 350 today, I'm living with my sister at the moment now. When I get my 350 today, the same day is finished. Like the 350 doesn't help. It's not doing anything. Like nothing.
You have been receiving it since it was announced in 2020,
yes,
after you lost your job, and you're saying that till today it has done little to help your situation financially.
Yes, it doesn't help. Just like I told you now, like if you get the 350, if you get it by the post office, you go home. That 350 doesn't secure you for the home, man. It's nothing. You can't do nothing with it. Today we're gonna listen to the minister. They're gonna talk about the budget. Other people come to our country, and they have nice jobs here. Our people of South Africa, doesn't have the qualifications for particular job. It's true, but the other people from other countries come and have luxury lives here. In South Africans, that's must live in poor, and it's not right to our people.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. 28-year-old David. He is a graduate and lost his job at the beginning of the pandemic, saying that 350 will be finished by today. He's here to pick it up here at the post office.
Athi Mtongana, live to us there in Bellville. Nasiphi is in Langa. Xolani, Mbanjwa, business editor in the Cape Town Parliamentary Precinct. To all my colleagues, thanks very much indeed.